I think we should kind of elaborate on that a little bit, because I see some comments in the chat about IBIT and ETFs and things like that. That's still part of the fiat system. We're talking about holding Bitcoin in self-custody that you have the keys to. Because Bitcoin, I know we kind of like to throw around just the Bitcoin thing, but it's important to note that we're talking about Bitcoin in self-custody here, because that's the difference maker here to me anyways.
Yeah, if you have Bitcoin in an ETF, you're basically just holding a stock.
Exactly.
All those risks that come with stocks come with your Bitcoin in that case. So what this spreadsheet is basically it just goes through a bunch of risks that are associated with stocks, and I wanted to see if they affect Bitcoin as well. So the first one here, I'll explain it, and then maybe we can get all of our thoughts. So market risk, overall market fluctuations, but this is based on like economic downturn. So let's say, for example, there's a recession. There's people just don't want to invest anymore, or whatever it is. Stocks would be impacted by that. And what I mean by that is a company could actually go to zero and then never come back. The stock of a company could go to zero and never come back, and that's happened in the past. But that can't happen to Bitcoin, because no matter what happens, even if the market doesn't want Bitcoin, the next block is still gonna it's still gonna be mined. Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree for the most part. I think that if something happened, and I have no idea what this could be, so it's just a complete hypothetical. But
let's say it's like the .com bubble or something, or like something like that happens.
I still think that it could happen where one day, even though the blocks are still going along, there just isn't much interest in it. Like that is a definite risk in the future. I don't know what leads to that. I don't see how that could happen just based on where we are, what we've seen. It's impossible to predict the future, but there could be a day where even if the blocks are still coming in, the Satoshis might actually not have much value in it. So I agree in the sense that it still can't be stopped, but the value of those underlying the Satoshis could still drop significantly if something were to happen, or people just never, understand what's happening here. There's never interest, and it just kind of fades out over time. I think I don't know. What do you guys think on that?
Yeah. I mean, there's always a shiny, there's something shiny in the market, right? There's something shiny to buy, and Bitcoin is sort of, like SpaceX. Bitcoin is ultimately like this evergreen shiny object, but it has moments where it's less popular and just isn't appealing to the market, right? Like, and Bitcoin does not have cash flows. It doesn't have metrics that you can evaluate based on these fundamental investment sort of thesis. And so a lot of it is sort of a speculation of where you think this asset will go in the future, or a use case of having a sovereign asset that is detached from anything else and completely reliable, permissionless, and censorship resistant. So if those attributes of Bitcoin become seen as more valuable, then Bitcoin will raise in price as people want to own that type of asset. So I do think that there's market risk to price, but no market risk to Bitcoin as like a protocol, as the protocol dominance, like the dominant crypto layer of the world.
I think, obviously, there are market forces that impact Bitcoin in the short run, maybe in the medium run even, but it's very different to a company. A company has usually a very narrow industry, a very narrow niche, somewhere where they operate in. I mean, there are exceptions of like companies that are so global and so distributed. Like I would think about a Google or like an Apple that like really have a very decentralized market, all of us, or almost, but it's like a very few that are very decentralized. With Bitcoin, it's literally in every single country. It has different buyers there. If companies are struggling, individuals might be doing good, and the other way around. So it's, I don't know if you can like just say yes and no with stocks and Bitcoin, but there is certainly a degree on how resilient Bitcoin is over companies. And actually, with every year going on, this first risk that Rashad mentioned here will get better and better for Bitcoin, because more and more people will understand it, more and more people come in, the floor is moving up. and we just like, I mean, there are just people that just like catch Bitcoin when it's going down. There are people that with dry powder and just like would never leave it under a certain degree. Is like the tweets that we see, like, if Bitcoin drops to $1, I'll buy them all, kind of a thing, you know. It's like so the floor is moving up, and it's less and less bound to markets. But right now, in the short run, it can still be like President Trump comes up, says something, it drops 20%. Like that can still happen. But
I just want to say one
rise
thing on that,
fast.
because I think it's really important to understand the differences in terms of what gives these two things value. So Bitcoin and SpaceX, like what is the fundamental value of holding a SpaceX share? It's that you think that Elon and SpaceX are going to create products and services that will create value into the future, that will have enough of a return to make it worth allocating your capital to that. But what is that for Bitcoin? What's the value for Bitcoin? And Forrest kind of alluded to this. What did you say there, Forrest? Sovereignty, unstoppable money. These characteristics of Bitcoin, these are much more like, I would say, global for sure. They're more inherent within human beings to want more freedom, which Bitcoin solves. Bitcoins don't want to ask, people don't want to ask permission from banks and centralized entities. Bitcoin solves that. So I think that Bitcoin doesn't have much market risk overall. Of course, there's always going to be fluctuations, volatility in the fiat world, because that's just what happens over there. It's always like that, especially when there's so few people who actually understand what Bitcoin is. But I think that as long as people value freedom and sovereignty and being able to cross borders with their wealth and send value across the world without permission, and having a unit of measurement that no central bank or country can create more units and debase, as long as people value those characteristics, Bitcoin will be more and more in demand. But if they ever stop, like if that ever changes, if people just decide that they don't need to send peer-to-peer transactions, or they don't care about being able to actually own something and cross borders or secure it properly without any sort of physical risk of somebody coming to take it from you, as long as humans still value those characteristics, then yes, Bitcoin's going to be fine overall. But if there ever comes a day where people just don't care about that stuff anymore, that would, to me, would be a market risk, because that's when the demand starts dropping in Bitcoin, and the price or the value of those Satoshis start dropping. And then people stop mining, the network gets less secure, and it's just kind of an effect. But I don't think that humans will ever not value freedom and sovereignty. And so I think that Bitcoin will always have that draw. It's just that a lot of people don't understand that Bitcoin gives you that ability right now. So that's why it's so volatile.
Yeah.
And I was writing because like Ver asked, like, do you guys bought any SpaceX? And it's hard because I kind of have to like separate the emotions from my investing mindset and like what I do with my finances, because I'm a huge fan from SpaceX. I'm a huge fan of Tesla. I'm a huge fan of Elon Musk in general. I think he's a net positive for humanity, and I think he pushes a lot of the limits that needs to be pushed. But I don't invest in any of his companies because I think they don't really offer that much upside anymore. I mean, SpaceX is soon a $3 trillion company. The biggest company on planet Earth doesn't have 5 trillion. It's like 4 point something. And so, like, what is the total addressable market for SpaceX? They still have to show that they're extremely profitable, which they aren't at the moment at all. They still have to show the execution, and I already see like this business risk, the interest rate, like all the different risks that like Rashad will go into just in a moment. And so you have all those risks associated with a business that can all go wrong, and at the same time, even if everything goes amazing for SpaceX, what's the total return? Like a 10x? Like, can it go to 30 trillion when gold is currently at 20 trillion? Like you have to be serious asking yourself, like the immense risk that you're taking on with SpaceX, and then the total addressable market is like 2x or 3x from here. Without inflation, of course, like they will go to 30 trillion because we'll print a bunch of money. But like the real upside potential, like if they just get to be the biggest company on planet Earth, they have a 2x from here. which is not that crazy. And if Bitcoin is successful, we are talking 100x from here. I personally think so. So like, do you really want to be in SpaceX? Yeah, I get it. Like, I'm a fan. I know Elon Musk is not all good. I know he did a lot of bad things, but I'm just like a fanboy. And like my inner Elon fanboy wants to buy SpaceX and Tesla and like do all this rocket shit. Like, but then I look at the company and I'm like, I cannot touch this. It's overvalued. The risk does not, like the potential reward doesn't justify the massive risk that I see with that business.
There's so much risk. It's so inflated already. Like it's bumping up against these massive companies with massive profits. Elon has been incredibly close to the current regime within America. What happens if they lose the midterms? What happens if a Democrat gets in next election cycle? There'll be retributions for that. And I actually suspect that would happen for Bitcoin to some respect as well. There would be sort of some political retributions. But I mean, he's so directly tied with SpaceX to what the government allows him to do. And Bitcoin has that to some degree as it's developed and created so many on and off ramps that are subjected to these things. And, you know, America being sort of the financial powerhouse of the world and hegemony and all that. But ultimately, the network itself does not care about any of that. If you really get back, there's these sort of layers on top that care about these things, and they will get affected by change, similar to stocks would, and all of that. But underneath that, there's this fundamental value proposition of Bitcoin, which is the network that that Jor and I have talked about, that isn't affected by those things. So even if Bitcoin's price gets affected negatively, there's still this bottom where it hits and it just says, I'm going to buy this because I can root around the on and off ramps. I'm going to buy this because I can use it as peer-to-peer money and I can secure it myself. And that creates some floor of people like all four of us and many more that will buy this thing regardless of market risk. The market risk that does exist to some degree on Bitcoin, which we've established is nothing compared to the market risk of investing in stocks, basically.
Yeah. Okay. So the next one here, Bitcoin's not a company, so this one doesn't even matter. I wouldn't even go into this one. It's not a business. It doesn't sell a product. Next one, inflation risk. I think inflation risk kind of affects Bitcoin because people still value it in other, and if there's too much inflation, price might come down temporarily. It affects people's perception of it. But for SpaceX, it would impact it massively because it needs to keep increasing its the prices of its products, right, or the services that it offers, and maybe the customers that it have don't want to pay that higher price.
And I think the financing is the big one, right? Like there is sort of a lot of there is some financing that goes into people being able to have extra cash that they raise from financing, and they put that into something like Bitcoin. But that exists as well for the individual investors and institutions for investing in something like SpaceX. But then there's SpaceX itself needing to finance its operations. Like it is not a profitable business as it begins to expand. It's essentially a startup for AI that is destroying its profitability. Like it does have these arms of profitability, and then these parts where it's a net negative on revenue, or on profits. And how are they going to pay? How are they going to pay for a deficit of 5 billion or whatever it is? Well, they're going to raise money. And if inflation is high, the Fed is going to keep interest rates higher, and so the cost to raise capital is higher for stocks. And so, yeah, there's definitely inflation risk on financing, on selling the products, on many different fronts.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the next one. Did you guys have any input, Jor or Robin, on this one?
Not really. I mean, inflation is always like inflation is, I think, inflation might actually be a no for Bitcoin because it drives asset prices up, kind of thing. Like that's the only thing that I had in there. If it might just be a no because doesn't have the same inflation risk as like a company with the products and all of that. I mean, you could also argue like if there's crazy money printing, asset prices are also there's this meme going on in COVID where like the Fed printed so much money that Jeff Bezos retired. You know, like the Amazon shot so much up. So yeah, like the inflation risk is way more at company level than a Bitcoin level. Absolutely.
Yeah, in terms of inflation, I think it's very hard to compare to Bitcoin because I think that there's really two ways for the price of Bitcoin to go up. What causes the price of Bitcoin to go up? And one of them is obviously inflation. When you create more units of the thing that we measure it in, right, which currently is US dollars, when you print more of those units usually find assets. And so it's real estate, it's the S&P, it's Bitcoin. So they usually inflate. So if you're holding Bitcoin and they print a bunch of money, a lot of that money is going to go into Bitcoin. And so you pretty much just end up breaking even because, yeah, you're worth more, but still everything around you costs more. So you don't really get ahead just because they print more money and Bitcoin goes up. Because when you go to spend your money, use your purchasing power, things cost more money at that point. So you kind of break even. But the real thing, the real way that Bitcoin goes up in terms of the price is when more people value the things that we were just talking about. As more and more people adopt Bitcoin and join the network and store their wealth in Bitcoin, sell some of their real estate to buy Bitcoin, or sell some of their stocks to buy Bitcoin, that's the real growth in Bitcoin. So I think inflation is pretty much irrelevant in Bitcoin terms. They're too much different systems and networks, so they're not really compatible in that way. But I do think that even if you're a Bitcoiner, you're going to break even. You're not going to lose for the most part, especially over the long term, week to week, month to month. You might be, in the reds, but over time, you're never going to lose just because they print more money in Bitcoin. So to me, that makes it pretty much obsolete. I would agree with Robin that it's not really affected by inflation. But the real thing that you want in Bitcoin is more users, more people using the network, holding Bitcoin, taking self-custody of it. That's what really drives it up because that's when you have more people wanting the same amount of scarce units. And that's how value rises. That's how purchasing power and price goes up over time. So I would agree with that one.